Have you ever lost a game and you don't even know what happened? Like, no clear blunders or obvious mistakes, and you just lost. Like, your pieces just felt squeezed, and that was it. The game was over. You check the game, your opponents are playing like super crazy accuracy. It could be a case where they actually know positional chess and you don't. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the key concepts in which you have to know to actually elevate your chess. Weak squares, bad pieces, good pieces, things that you need to look out for when it comes on to true positional mastery. Feed a master Raheem Glaves here. You're basically learning the things I got along my journey. So take notes and we're getting right into this video. Guys, make sure that you have your pen and paper. So the concepts might be a little advanced, but I'll still break it down for you. So understand that bishops are worth more than knights in general. Now at the lower levels, you don't have to pay attention to this too much because, a lot of persons are blundering due to a lot of knight forks and stuffs. But the more you climb up the rating ladder, the blunders become less. And you're going to have to know how to outright outplay your opponents. Now, whenever you have the bishops, you need to open lines. But why? This bishop is currently active. Even though it's not really in the center of the board, it is completely active on f2. This pawn, let's say I plant the pawn in front of the bishop, that will now limit the activity of that piece because the line is closed, right? Because we have an open line with the bishop, a lot of activity is now here. Like, it can do a lot of damage once the line is open. This bishop, on the other hand, is boxed in by its own pawn. So whenever you have the bishop pair in chess, you need to look to open lines, like free the lines so that the bishops get life. Pawn to f4 here is, again, a super good move. And this is what we mean when we say that we need to, like, open the game. Now, if there's a lot of pawns on the board, then the bishops will get blocked. If the game is open, like you have traded some pawns, the bishops now actually get a lot of life. So whenever you're having bishops, look for pawn breaks. And pawn breaks mean like a lot of pawn trades, which again, clear lines. Or move your pawns forward to actually create room so that these bishops actually get life. If you just take a more deeper look at this position, we're even attacking the pawn on c6. Understand that bishops do this quite well. They're on one side of the board, but they can attack on the other side. Knights can't do this, which is why knights prefer close games where they can jump up and down. I'm going to be going into that example right after this, but I want you guys to get this concept first. Bishops are better than knights. They control more squares. They can actually dominate the board. If you can basically like take a deeper look, it's cutting the board in half, guys. So just to make sure that we're on the same path, realizing that this bishop is now attacking that pawn on c6 and it can't be defended. A lot of pressure is being put on black's position from the distance. Complete board control. So if this knight goes back to d8, then again the knight on c5 will hang. So there's no way for black to protect the pawn on c6. Hope you guys are following. Let's get into the next chess concept. Okay, so we know that bishops are better than knights in general. So why do knights have the potential to outplay bishops sometimes? Now, bishops like open games and knights like close games. Whenever you have a very close positions, meaning the bishops or the bishop that you have doesn't have open lines to play with, then the knights are going to start to outpower the bishops. So we're going to take a look at this example, and we're basically seeing that black has a lot of pawns on the same color square as his bishop. So this bishop is unable to get in a very aggressive role. It's not able to attack or put pressure on the white position. This is what we call a bad piece in chess. If the piece cannot really attack, like do damage, write it off as a bad piece, guys. We need pieces in a very aggressive formation. And right now, we have this knight on e3, which is able to dominate that bishop. And knights like close games, and guess what? In close games, you're going to have potentials of outpost. And an outpost, you can think of this as A square in your opponent's territory, we could actually utilize the box. A square in your opponent's territory which cannot be defended by a pawn. So we have moves like knight to f5, knight to d5, and once you get a hold of a square like this, like an outpost, it's going to be very difficult, sometimes impossible, for your opponents to remove that piece from that area. As again, that outpost is a square which cannot be attacked by a pawn. So you can look out for these in your games to start dominating your opponent's pieces. Just to show you like a quick example of how a knight can completely outplay a bishop. For lower viewers, this might still look like an equal position, but I'm going to be showing you right now how easily you can actually outplay once you have the right technique. So this bishop was under attack. This pawn was also under attack. So black played the passive move bishop to f8. And this is again a positional advantage. Because the bishop is unable to get aggressive and the knight can put pressure on almost every single pawn on the board, we're going to be combining it with king activity. So something you can actually put down for the end game is that you need to get your king involved. So king f2, we're going to just speed through this, but king g3 and king to h4. The king just slowly made its journey towards this h6 pawn. And what's going to happen is after g4, black is completely frozen. This bishop cannot move, as again the knight will simply take it, and if the king moves, the same thing happens, like king to h5, and we're back into the same position where black is completely frozen with moves. If the king goes back, we're going to take the pawn on h6, and if the bishop moves, we're going to be taking the pawn on d6. But please take note, again, by us having the knight being able to put pressure, like all black can do right now is defend because he has bad pieces, especially again this piece on f8. Bad pieces defend. You need to have aggressive pieces. Now for positional chess, ensure that you're putting pressure on the weaknesses, things that cannot be protected by a pawn, and this is a clear area of what can happen if the knight starts to outplay the bishops. If you are interested in 1v1 sessions, you could book through my website. The link is going to be in my description and also pinned in my comments. RaheemGlaveschess.com. Now the law of chess is always activity. We always hear that we need to put our rooks on open lines, but why open files? This rook on a8 is just looking at a pawn, not active. We now have two rooks completely dominating the open files. And what's happening? We are establishing a lot of control. So all of this is under white's control. Okay? You need to, with positional chess in general, just master control, guys. The more squares you control, especially in your opponent's side of the board, the more you're going to dominate. You'd have heard before that rooks on the 7th are in heaven. This is no lies, guys. Like, rook to e7 here. No, what are we doing? We're controlling squares in our opponent's side of the board. And if you get two rooks there, you basically dominate the entire 7th rank. Let's say that our opponents don't understand activity. We can basically even see to the left side of the screen here where the bar is completely in the white's favor. Even though if you count the material, it's completely equal in pawns and pieces. It's because white has what we call a positional advantage. We have so much control. If black continues to play passively, let's say that he defends the pawn on b7, like white simply attacked the pawn, black defended, we will now add the second rook to the 7th. And by you having two rooks on the 7th, things just get absolutely crazy for your opponents. Now, he's unable to defend the b7 pawn. We now have two attackers. He now has one defender. Let's say that he even tries to push. Rook takes h7 followed by rook to g7 is already checkmate. And this is possible because he placed both rooks on the 7th. Alright? The more squares you can control in your opponent's half, the better. Remember, rooks also like open lines. The difference between white's rook and black's rook is the fact that one has a lot of room to work with, while the other one didn't have open lines. It was stuck behind its own pawns, and bad things happened. ensure that you're putting your rooks on open lines, and if you get the chance to actually invade and put your rooks on the 7th, you're doing it. Absolutely crushing your opponents. Let's get into the next concept. Now you need to understand that a lot of pawn play creates weaknesses. Now if you're creating weaknesses, ensure that your pieces are the ones controlling those squares. Alright, example with this structure here, it's having a big hole on the G2 square. You would want your pieces controlling those squares, because if the reverse happens and your opponents start to control those squares for you, long story short guys, you're cooked. Now again, take that down. Ensure that if your opponents are pushing pawns around their king, you need to try to get your pieces lurking around in those areas, or actually plant your pieces into those weaknesses. Now what would you play for black in this scenario? And remember, there's going to be a test at the end, which is going to be a little bit more advanced. But this move, q to f3 here, is threatening checkmate in 1, which cannot be stopped. This is due to the fact that white has weaknesses around the king, and black managed to get his pieces there. So ensure that you're not pushing pawns around your king unprovoked and allowing your opponent's pieces to slip through. Let's get into the final test. Now this is a very advanced test, so if you're low rated, don't take this one too harsh. This might require a little bit of board vision. What would you play as black in this scenario? If you tell me rook to c8, that's a good move. I'll give it a pass. You're controlling like lines in your opponent's half. That's how you activate the rook. If you tell me bishop to a3, that is also a pass. You're controlling lines in your opponent's half. If you're low rated and you told me those two answers, I will give you a pass. You have successfully understood how to control weak squares and utilize your pieces a lot better. Now for advanced viewers, you have to dig a little deeper and find a move for black in this position. Now for the queen, you need to utilize the queen as a rook or bishop, as you know, it's basically those two pieces combined. So it means that a queen can actually operate quite well both on open diagonals and open files. So this move, q to e2, is the move. White wants to really create like a small attack on the king side, and trust me, if white plays pawn to h5 and black has forced, it's like basically forced to put his knight on the edge of the board, we are absolutely terrified. So this move q to e2 stops pawn to h5, as we can simply take it, and it also hits this bishop on d2. Another thing that you guys need to take note of is whenever your opponents are pushing a lot of pawns, remember, try to slip through the cracks. This is a double threat on both the bishop and the pawn on e5. So yeah, you can simply just take it. If bishop to c3, then q to h5 and we're winning this pawn on h4. So just by white having a lot of pawns pushed, we were able to slip through the cracks, and just like that, we are winning the pawn on h4 and later on the game. This is it, guys. Like knight f3 incoming. Ensure that you are utilizing your pieces quite well. Understand positional chess and your rating will improve. Thanks again for watching, guys. Like, share, and subscribe. And see you again another time.